It's a little too high for me. My wife has told me I've become a bit of a fall risk, so I'm using this stool. My father passed from Parkinson's in 2007. Like many of the dads here, he was a good man. He preached integrity, dedication to family, and treat all people with dignity and respect. My dad was also a World War II and Korean veteran, and he told us, make sure you always say thank you to our veterans. My dad also had some goofy sayings that, even to this day, I'm still trying to figure out. He would say, there's always a definite difference in Delsey. I don't know what a Delsey is. Maybe you do. And he also had some other crazy things along the way that I could never figure out. But one of his statements that he said to me that stuck with me, and what I'd like to talk to you about today, is always remember to dance with who brought you. Back in 8th grade, our 8th grade teachers started asking us about what we wanted to do in our professional career. I was kind of like, what? I'm still playing kickball in the middle of the road, playing Andy over at Mr. Haywood's house, and kick the can in the back of David Duncan's backyard. I wasn't ready to think about where my professional life was to go. But then our school administration decided they were going to give us a vocation test. And they gave us an answer sheet, a spiral-bound test booklet containing questions like, what color do you think of when you're sad? Blue, green, red, or purple? Or would you rather row a boat upstream or cut down a tree? Or what color makes you the most happy? Excuse me. What do you think of when you're most happy? A cow, a toaster, or a fire? Somehow, these answer sheets were sent away, compiled, and then they were to come back and tell us what our lot in life was to be. Weeks went by. Finally, one day in homeroom, all of us got white envelopes with our name on it. The results were in. I was soon to know what I was destined to be. As my classmates opened up their envelopes, I could hear them say things like stewardess, yeah, that's what they called it at the time, stewardess, engineer, small business owner. I'm thinking, okay, I'm waiting to open mine up here at the last minute. I'm thinking Major League Baseball player, astronaut. I guess I had some lofty goals. So I opened up mine, and I read down the first paragraph, and there, right in the middle of the page, were 2 words: truck driver. Not really where I was hoping to be. And as I read down that page a little further at Seneca Junior High School in Penn Hills, it got a little more granular. And it said, you should concentrate on things like parcel service driver, dairy delivery driver, and the one that still haunts me today, folks, refuse truck driver. I was going to be a garbage man. Time went by. Fast forward to my sophomore year in high school. I had a very innovative and progressive gym teacher. His name was Bob Ford. Bob was a great guy, great guy. Every once in a while, he would bring in guest speakers from the community to talk about their careers with us. We've had dentists, doctors, lawyers. None of them really interested me at all. I was actually kind of looked at it as a free period. Not really much to do. These guys didn't interest me. That is, until one day. One day he brought this gentleman in who talked about this new field called emergency medical services, pre-hospital care. It immediately got my attention. I was like, this is pretty interesting. He went on and on and on. I was spellbound. I said to the burnout dude next to me that had just had 3 doobies at the bus stop, "What's this guy's name?" He said, "His name's Glenn Carson." I'm like, "Carson?" I found out a few moments later it was Glenn Cannon who came to speak to my class that day. I immediately went home and spoke to my family about it. Now, you have to understand, at that time, I was a pretty quiet adolescent. I didn't say much. Plus, my sister did most of the talking at my house. So my parents were very impressed with the fact that I was bubbling over about this time in health class when Mr. Cannon came to speak. Who'd have thought that 42-minute lecture would have led to 50 years in some aspect of this most worthy and great career? I'd like to tell you a little story today. And it's not my story, but it's one that I read many, many, many years ago, and it had a profound impact on me. So please indulge me for a moment. Back in May of 1967, a young naval aviator by the name of Charlie Plumb flew his F-4 Phantom fighter jet off the deck of the USS Kitty Hawk. It was his 75th mission over North Vietnam. As he flew, his plane shuddered. He began to lose altitude. He was hit. He could not control his airplane and made a last-minute decision to eject. He pulled the levers with all his might, and with 8 G's of force, his seat was ejected upward. A few moments later, he heard the whoomph of his parachute. He landed in enemy territory, was captured, and was repatriated back to the United States some 2,103 days later. Years after his return to the U.S., Charlie was having dinner with his wife, and he noticed from across the way there was a gentleman who was intently staring at him while he ate. He thought, what's up with this man? He tried not to glance over, but every time he did, he saw the man looking even more intently at him. Finally, that man came over to his table, and he said, "Are you Charles Plumb?" Charlie nodded his head in the affirmative. He said, "You were a naval aviator aboard the U.S. Kitty Hawk. You were shot down over North Vietnam. You spent 6 years in prison as a POW. Charlie said, "Yes, how do you know that?" He said, "I packed your parachute." That night, Charlie went home. He couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about that man. He kept thinking about his physical parachute, his emotional parachute, and his spiritual parachute that he needed to survive for 6 years as a prisoner of war in a North Vietnam prison camp. He also thought about that man who worked so hard, not even knowing him, to save him. That man who folded the silks on that parachute in the bowels of that aircraft. That man who weaved those shrouds together, knowing full well that parachute will probably never be needed, and holding in his hands the fate of someone he didn't even know. So to all of you EMS leaders here today, might I ask you, who's packing your parachute? You know, we all think about our time in EMS. We didn't get where we are on our own. We had a lot of people helping us along the way. You've heard from some of them here today. And I am no different than the rest. I had a lot of people helping me along the way also. You see, folks, I'm no legend. I'm just a guy who chose this career path from a great speaker in my 10th grade phys ed class. But I had a lot of help along the way, and I've had some enjoyable moments, and I've had, like many of you, some terrible moments. I'm humbled and honored to be here. Did I help a few patients along the way? I sure hope I did. Have I been an advocate for EMS with young people who are considering this as a career? I believe I have been. And am I interested in educating the public about the plight of emergency medical services today? I did then, and I surely am now, even as I'm retired. But again, I'm not a legend. But there are a lot of people who brought me to this dance, and I'd like to acknowledge them here right now. Aaron, is it possible just to bring the house lights up just a little bit? Thank you. I appreciate it. So I'm sorry, I'm going to move down here for a second, but I'd like to talk to you a little closer. First and foremost, I'd like to ask my family to stand. And that includes my family in the back. My sister and brother-in-law, you stand too. So, a lot of testaments to the spouses here today, and I'm no different. 40 years in October with me, she deserves an award. And I'm fortunate to have great children, Mike, Christina, Al, and of course a very supportive family. My sister and brother-in-law are here too. They should be standing as well because they come on the long ride with me, and I appreciate that. So I don't really deserve this stage. You do. And thank you for packing my parachute. Where's Doug Garrettson and Andy Blanco? Could you please stand? These two gentlemen took me on my first ambulance call on Mortimer Avenue in Wilkins Township. They don't remember that. They've tried to forget that moment. I was a bumbling fool. Andy had asked me to go out and get the Reeve stretcher out of the bench seat. 15 minutes later, Andy came out and said, "Are you bringing it in?" And I said, "I can't find it." He's like, "All you do is open up this little door and pull it out." I didn't realize that at the time, but they could have blown me off and said, "This guy's hopeless," but instead, they had patience and understanding. You too should have this stage. Thank you for packing my parachute. Where's my great friend Jeff West? Please stand. There he is. Please stay standing. Jeff and I ran many calls together in our days at Penn Hills. He was a great partner, a great man, loves his family, just an all-around great guy. Believe it or not, Jeff and I even resuscitated a patient together with bicarb and a Life Pack 4 paddles, so we pulled that off. Actually, we didn't resuscitate it. Jeff resuscitated. I just went and gave supported words like, "What the hell happened?" Or, "You better get this IV in or she's not gonna make it." But Jeff is far more than just the person who worked with me on the ambulance. He, along with my good friends Bill Miller and Walt Stoy, we are fortunate in Western Pennsylvania to have educators, EMS educators like Jeff West. He's a great guy, and he's a credit to our profession. Jeff's also retiring in July, so welcome to the ranks of retirement, Jeff. God bless and thank you. Where's Kathy Cannon? Could you please stand? So, We've heard a lot about Glenn Cannon today, who was a great, great man. Kath, can you please stand? Sorry, but what most of you don't know is Kathy Cannon is an incredible nurse. She worked at Columbia Hospital in probably the early 70s, late 70s, early 80s. There was a patient that I brought into Columbia Hospital at that time who was very agitated, frustrated. I couldn't get him under control. Kathy came over, held that patient's hand, spoke softly, and that patient immediately calmed down. I learned compassion from Kathy Cannon. Thank you for packing my parachute. And finally, to fulfill a wish of my dad, I'd like to ask my friend Tony Schrader and Bob Plitzkowski to please stand. These are my two friends, Tony and Bob. You probably know Tony. I doubt that many of you know Bob. They're known well outside these walls as Master Sergeant Anthony Schrader and Brigadier General Robert Plitzkowski. So on behalf of my father, my family, thank you for packing all of our parachutes. God bless you. In closing, just let me say, remember, you didn't get here on your own, folks. You had a lot of people helping you along the way, and we've heard some of those stories already today, and I am certain we will hear more this afternoon. So don't forget those who packed your parachutes, be it in the EMS, in healthcare, in auto body, whatever career you might be in, and always remember, in the words of Charlie Harvat, remember to dance with who brought you. Thank you.